Hello students, welcome to our last unit, choosing not to use drugs, alcohol, vape pens, tobacco, spit tobacco, and inhalants. All of those things. Students, when Miss Markson and I were young, there were advertisements on TV about using drugs being like your brain being a fried egg. Sadly, this commercial has been taken off of YouTube, but that's about what we knew in the 80s, that drugs fry your brain. But these are not even new brain imaging pictures, and what we know now is that this is your brain. This is a transverse view, like go and pull my brain or pull my head up. You can see heightened activity in the middle part of my brain. That's the part of the brain that is constantly making sure that we're safe, scanning the environment, the amygdala, the deep parts of the temporal lobe that help keep us alive and safe. The rest of the brain is kind of chugging along. Not a lot going on. This is your brain under this picture, addicted, let me just move myself down here, addicted to methamphetamine, alcohol, heroin, and cocaine. We can see now in brain imaging pictures the effects that drugs have on the function of the brain. So methamphetamine, first of all, look at the dark spots, the spots where no activity is taking place. By the way, these on the normal brain are called ventricles. Those are normal spaces that everyone has in their brain. They're filled with fluid. So in alcohol, you can see the enlarged ventricles, the large black spaces where no activity is happening in the brain, and less activity happening there. In the mid part of the brain, heroin and cocaine both make the brain just kind of look like it's going, okay, and also look at all of these black spaces where nothing is happening. So we know that drugs have a terrible effect on the brain. Students always ask why people use if they know that addiction is possible. We're going to touch on that today as well. This is a pie chart from early on in the 21st century. By and large, most people in the United States on this pie chart are addicted to alcohol. And this is a chart that you have to multiply by 1,000. So at the time of this, about 18.5 million people ages 12 or older dependent on or abusing alcohol. Marijuana, my guess is this number has gotten much higher because this pie chart was before marijuana was legal in quite a few places as it is now. But at the time, 4 million people, which is a lot of people to be abusing or dependent on substances. Pain relievers, again, this has gotten bigger because of the opioid epidemic. Lots of that in the news lately with Purdue Pharma taking responsibility for pushing doctors to prescribe their painkillers. But the things that we normally think about, heroin, cocaine, drugs that, when we think drugs, those are the drugs that we think of, relatively few people use. And what is not on this chart is tobacco. I'm just going to save that. But lots and lots of people are addicted to tobacco. All right, this is just a tiny little review. Looky here, it's a neuron. And the reason why I want to review this is because of what happens in between the end of one neuron, where this message is coming through, and the beginning of the next neuron here. Those are the places, those little spaces are called synapses, and that's where the neurotransmitters blast across and bring the message from one neuron to another. The neurotransmitters are where the important and exciting work happens in terms of message transmission and where the awful work happens in terms of becoming addicted. So the go mechanism in our brain is the one that says, oh, this is a good idea, let's do this, it sounds like fun. Or the go mechanism is also, I'm hungry, let's eat. The go mechanism in cave people, well, still in us as well, but in cave people, the go mechanism, part of the important part of being a cave person was reproducing early enough in order to keep cave people on the planet. It's one of our common drives that we have with animals. So, by the way, the 3 common drives are avoiding pain, seeking pleasure, and doing things as energy efficiently as possible. Those are 3 things that all animals share in common. So, the go mechanism in females, it is developed by the age of 14 to 15, fully developed, and in males by age 15 to 16. So that's the mechanism in our brain that is going to maybe make some decisions that aren't the best, because it's the mechanism that is like, whew, that was fun, or that sounds like a good idea. When you choose to use drugs or alcohol, what is inside the brain looks something like this. Ooh, can I draw on this? I'm going to have to mess around a little bit with this. So right now in all of our brains, we have this neurotransmitter called dopamine, and it is it does a lot of different things actually, but in the reward centers of the brain, it's what makes that go mechanism. It's what gives you the reward after you decide to do something. Like you're really hungry and you decide to eat, and it feels good and it tastes good. There's a spike of dopamine that rewards you for eating. You get little spikes of dopamine not throughout the day. So here's our baseline level of dopamine. We are just hanging out in class. We are not doing anything particularly exciting right now, let's be honest. And the baseline level of dopamine is just the same, all right? Now, if I get my little pencil out and show you what happens here, I hope I can do this, show you what happens here when, for me, it's something very exciting that doesn't happen in everyday life. I love rainbows. So I can kind of read the sky when there are dark clouds on one side of the sky. It's usually the eastern sky, and it's bright in the west in the evening, and it's spitting rain or even pouring down rain. That's a rainbow moment. I'll go outside and look for a rainbow. And when I see one, woo, I get this spike of dopamine. I'm like, oh my gosh, a rainbow. You guys, you got to come see this. It's a double rainbow, even better. If you think about things in your life that have been so positive, so exciting for you, that so much so that you want to do it again, those are things that gave you a spike of dopamine. So Christmas is coming. That feeling of coming downstairs on Christmas morning and seeing the presents. It might be going to your grandma's house and she always bakes or makes your favorite kind of food. It could be a roller coaster. You rode your first roller coaster and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. I can't wait to do it again. Experiences like that you remember and want to repeat, pretty sure sign that you had a release of dopamine. All right. So what happens, this is my rainbow, and I'm just going to label it here with a beautiful rainbow drawing so we remember what it is. That is so nice. The first time you use drugs, students, the first time a person uses drugs, the natural level of dopamine is, what happens with drugs is that it approximates what dopamine is like in the brain. It's like artificial dopamine, okay? So you put it in your brain, and your brain's response is 2 to 10 times higher than normal. 2 to 10 times higher than normal dopamine response. So if we look at my rainbow, 2 times that is, about up to here. 10 times, way off the screen, way above what I could draw for you. So let's just go about 2 times above. Maybe I'll go a little bit more. And we spike up here. Your brain, the amount of dopamine spikes. Remember, dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter. It's a pleasurable experience. And let's say it lasts for about this long. Then you come back down to your normal dopamine level. And your brain wants to repeat that because it felt good. And our bodies are wired to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to do both as efficiently as possible. So you're like, well, I want to do that again. And here's what happens. The second spike doesn't go up as high. It doesn't last as long. And when you come back down from it, you go back down below your normal dopamine level. Now, this is what takes a different amount of time in different people. Some people become addicted right away to a drug. Some drugs are extremely addictive. Nicotine is one of them. And others take a little bit longer. Alcohol takes longer to become addicted to. What continues to happen then is and you're not feeling great here. You're not feeling great at all. So you want to feel good again, and you come up and use again. It doesn't last as long, and when you come down further. So once those drugs are cleared out of your bloodstream, you are feeling awful. And here's what happens. The person can't wait to use again, and I'm kind of accelerating this a little bit. The high doesn't last as long. The low goes further down, and again, we are feeling awful. physically awful, mentally awful, not good when your dopamine level is so far below normal. Then what happens is eventually, you picture this chart going on across the right side of the page, eventually the person is using just to try to feel normal. And there's a point at which, again, accelerated, there's a point at which when they use, they don't even get to the point of feeling normal. This is often when someone uses too much of a drug and overdoses, or when someone switches to a different type of drug to try to experience the same high they felt here the first time they used. And you will never be able to experience that same kind of high because it doesn't exist anymore in your brain, the possibility. The really sad part is as you are artificially creating these dopamine rushes, your brain's ability to experience everyday moments of happiness deteriorate. So while the person who is becoming addicted to drugs is focused on those intense moments of pleasure, their brain becomes less able to experience everyday moments of happiness. And that's really where the sad part, well, and the whole thing, drug addiction is a sad thing, but that's where the really, really sad part comes in. And that person becomes focused so much on the next high that they forget about relationships, they forget even about food, they forget even about sex. And food and sex are two of our biggest drives as human beings. Safety being another. And they're not as concerned about safety either. All right, last slide. The stop mechanism is this part of our brain, students, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain. We didn't spend too much time on this, but it's the very front part of your frontal lobe, and it doesn't finish developing until much later. All right, much later than the go mechanism. The go mechanism is the one that says, okay, what could it hurt? Let's try it. The stop mechanism is the one who goes, wait a minute, I learned about addiction in 7th grade health class. Once you start, it's hard to stop, and it'll affect you for the rest of your life. In females, the stop mechanism is fully developed by age 24 to 25. 24 to 25, mid-20s. In males, a little bit later, 25 to 26. So it takes to your mid-20s before the part of your brain deep in your temporal lobe that's like, oh, this is a good idea, can work well with the stop mechanism part of your brain here who goes, wait, what could happen if I did that? What are the consequences? Would I get in trouble? Could I lose my job? Might I lose my scholarship? Might I be kicked off the team? All of those things don't kick in until your mid-20s. All right, students, so time for questions. Let's get back to class. Thank you for listening.